honest, I'm rather glad the Group 89's next session in the Lost Manor Phandelver is being delayed until this Saturday coming at the time this video goes up, because it gives me a chance to talk about the tutorial arena, which I had mentioned in my previous video about the Session 1 in the Lost Manor Phandelver, wherein our characters had got a chance to sort of put them through their paces, get used to the combat, spell casting, and using non-combat skills out of combat, or rather in a combat environment as well. I don't have the date for this adventure, actually. I think it was about the 31st of July when it began. It was at 3 o'clock and it ended about 2.5 hours later. It's usually actually towards the end of an adventure. So one of my players who played Shoria in the previous game, and in this one as well, had said that the game ended about 10 o'clock rather than 11 o'clock. So I tend to just lose track, and I then just guesstimate how much time we've spent when the adventure officially comes to a close. So this adventure was run by Michaela basically as a more practical exercise, because the Outroll server on Discord is constantly doing workshops. Every day they're doing something like character creation, combat 101, spellcasting 101. They've done a world building one recently that I really wanted to see, and so then I could sort of talk about my own opinions of world building. But yeah, this has been a good opportunity to talk about a lesson that I have been taught in World of Warcraft, but wouldn't actually apply until many years later. So this is the story of a group of players, including, and I do say including, this is not the story about my warlock, Mr. Barthelmet, because that's part of the lesson. This is a story including my character, Mr. Barthelmet, who appeared first of all in a writing prompt on Reddit, which is about a character having the devil's own luck, and the devil wants it back. And I've sort of been intrigued by that, and of course I found the perfect character portrait to go with it, which is Durnan from Waterdeep, and yeah, so I wanted to make him a warlock with the luck only a patron such as the Archfey could grant him. Along with him in this Colosseum, in a hallway, in this sort of dark, dank hallway leading up to a portcullis that enters this sandy 100 by 100 arena, are several other faceless combatants who will not be entering the arena this day. So the character is going down the line. I believe the first character that this sort of pit master, so to speak, this mountain of a man who's inspecting the would-be combatants, these would-be gladiators, sees is Ira, who is played by Kat. She's a half-orc, I should say Ira is a half-orc in sort of chainmail. She's a cleric. I believe her name, if I just bring it up now, I should be able to see it. Her name was Ira Lightning Shard. And from what I understand from her backstory, I didn't actually write it all down, but from what I understand, that her character was someone who was like a cleric of the I think of the Tempest domain. She was a cleric on the, or rather, she was like a sailor who had been washed ashore upon a shipwreck, and basically the god of storms of this universe had saved her. That's what I understand anyway. And I must admit, Cleric of the Tempest is one of my favourite ones. Whenever I'm looking at clerics in Baldur's Gate for a character, I'm always thinking, should I go for that one or should I go for a healer? And of course I end up going for the healer. But yeah, Cleric of the Tempest is definitely one that I might have to go back to after Garvel Grimhammer. Along with Ira is Shoria, whose shield doesn't seem to belong to her. She seems quite out of place here. Definitely not sort of fighting stuff, but seems confident enough to use it all the same. And of course, this mountainous creature sort of inspecting us all, it seems to admire their fighting spirit, at least, and the confidence there. And then, of course, there is Granite Stonejaw. I didn't actually need to write anything down about Granite Stonejaw because he's the character I remember most. Mostly, again, because this is Sam playing them, so the RP factor is just 110%. But also as well, they were playing a mountain dwarf, I believe, by the name of Granite Stonejaw. Now, I remember this partly because, or I should say mostly because, they had They were I think they were just copying Warhammer at this point. The Dwarven Barbarian or Slayer from Gotrek and Felix, Gotrek Gurnison. I believe they even Sam was even using their character portrait of Gotrek Gurnison. And I did rather enjoy that and the idea of a Dwarf Slayer. And I would like to play that kind of character, especially in a one-shot where they are expected to die in this sort of bloody fervour of battle. So that would have been quite interesting. And then along comes Mr. Barthelmet, and I'll have to bring up the character portrait here. Barthelmet is a rather gaudy looking chap, basically in the most horrific looking Christmas sweater that you could see. I say Christmas sweater, he looks like a walking Christmas sweater. He's wearing like red and green, like the gaudiest, the brightest green, not so like highlighter pen green, but very, very bright and also simultaneously dark green. And this just like red waistcoat and trousers, or green trousers, I couldn't remember. The point is that he's wearing these very bright colours, which is probably not the best thing to wear if there is a bull in this arena. Thankfully there wasn't. Unfortunately there was something much worse waiting for us. And this pitmaster looks over Mr. Barthelmet and thinks, are you sure you don't want the leather armour that comes complimentary with this adventure? And Barthelmet, of course, with a very cocky grin, he says, oh, I'm sure I've got plenty of tricks up my sleeve. Not realising, of course, that it won't be tricks enough that save him. Now, the tricks up his sleeve, of course, were, yes, he was a warlock, so he has magic spells. However, he needs a bit more than a deck of playing cards to defeat his opponents. So he came with because he's a variant human warlock, he came with the Magic Initiate feat. And I had to clear this with Michaela, our DM. I apologise if I keep saying that over and over again. I had to clear that with our DM to see if feats were okay, and thank God they were, because I was allowed the Mage Initiate or Magic Initiate feat that would allow me to use Mage Armour, which I think increases my AC up to 13 plus my Dexterity modifier, which is +2, so I had an AC of 15. And that wasn't enough. Oh dear. But you'll see why soon enough. Now, little did I know that if I had the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything book, I would have been able to use Eldritch Adept instead. I'm just having a look at it now, and it's much more fitting for my class. Yes, I realise that they're both one and the same, essentially. It's that Magic Initiate allows you to use Mage Armour, or rather any first level mage spell, at like once per day, or like once per long rest or whatever. And Eldritch Adept allows me to use it whenever I feel like. I can also touch other willing creatures as well, so I could boost the AC of any other creature. And as far as I'm aware, I could just have an army of people with this spell as long as it doesn't expire within 8 hours. But of course I lose the cantrips, and I wasn't really using the cantrips anyway, so whatever. So it wasn't really that big a loss. And I didn't own Tasha's Cauldron over everything at the time. Anyway, I'm focusing way too much on Barthelmet, which again is the point of the story. So after our characters are inspected, we immediately go through the portcullis. We march our sorry asses up to a regal dressed gnome who is currently doing the hedges. I apologise for the noise out there if you can hear it. Anyways, yeah, so this regal gnome, in addition to doing the hedges, also explains the rules of the arena. We simply have to find an orb in this arena and place it in the brazier and in the portcullis. In addition to this, we can also, the person with the brazier can also choose to leave party members behind to their fate, to whatever creatures may remain in this dungeon. Not that we could particularly see any. What we could see is that the arena was 100 by 100 feet. It was stone walls. There were steps and seats all around, and I think the walls were about 10 or 20 feet high, so we could scale them, but it would have taken a lot of our energy to do so, and we may have even been assaulted by some other creatures that were there. Not that we could see them. Several of them were hidden in the shrubbery, and one particular nasty one was hidden in the centre in a wrought iron crate, to which I would again learn my very valuable lesson. So this gnome walks out anyway and says that, okay, you know the rules. I hope you have better luck than the previous adventuring party. And she does actually say as well that she does actually say that this actually happened in the previous game as well, that I think it was about 3 of the 4 players had died in this arena. But it is a one-shot, and it is there to sort of show you how dangerous situations can be and how you're meant to synergize, which we didn't really learn until the very end of the dungeon. So, just as one of our players, Shoria, or rather one of our characters, Shoria, is strategizing and thinking that we should all stick to the wall so that we're not taken from surprise from behind. We should stick there, and we should sort of go in a circular motion so then we can have a full view of the battlefield and we can cover each other's backs better. Unfortunately, initiative is rolled, and Ira gets 11, and that's the highest that anyone in this match scored. I think even higher than the upcoming enemies as well. If I just have a look, yes, they score the lowest along with Shoria. So Ira, in an infinite, be it divine or orcish wisdom, begins to charge straight into the center of the battlefield, and of course alerts enemies, the enemy presence, but not before everyone else has had their turn. Next up is Granite Stonejaw, who also follows, and myself, Mr. Barthelmet, as well, sort of getting caught up in the ensuing chaos, which is essentially his and his patrons' shtick, basically. They very much like to gamble, they very much like the chaos and the randomness going on, and so of course he rushes in. And Shoria sticks to original plan and sticks to the walls, so she's going right of the walls or southwest of the arena from the top down point of view. So Ira's sort of heading into the center of the battlefield, and it's there where the scorpions start exiting their shrubbery, their bushes, and proceed to then move into attack. They have very little movement speed, and they also do very little damage. They're dispatched with relative ease. I managed to kill one of them towards one of the later rounds of combat. Shoria manages to I think she just steps on one and it just dies, but not before, of course, taking some piercing damage, but succeeding a Constitution saving throw. She just doesn't take any poison damage. If only those were the most wounds that this party had seen. Unfortunately not, and of course it's me who takes the most damage, as you'll soon see. So Ira's running straight to this crate in the center, this wrought iron crate, to sort of perform a perception check to get any idea of what's coming from there, be it any sight, sound, or smell, see if there's any cracks in there that you might be able to see the creature, any sort of sounds, or any smell it might be emitting, rather. Unfortunately, there isn't anything that she can tell except for a great slam, and I almost shat myself. I knew full well that our DM was going to do this, but I almost crapped my pants, and Mr. Barthelmet's duds may well have been green, red, and brown. So that wasn't particularly fun. But it did kind of terrify me in a way, to think, oh god, I only have 15 armor class, am I really going to survive this? Fortunately, though, we would prevail, but that's more for later. So anyway, so then Ira then begins to shout to the party that that there's something moving in there, and something very big and very angry, and proceeds to move south towards a crate. She then raises her dirty great warhammer with both hands. She puts a shield on the back, and she raises it and she slams it onto this crate. And just as she thumps it, this sort of gas, this green gas, just billows forth, and proceeds to do poison damage to her. I don't think it was enough. I think her Constitution save was a success, but only by half. And she then proceeds to run out, saying, by the way, guys, she's coughing and spluttering into her arm. She's shouting, there's traps in the dungeon. And I think as players, we all expected there were going to be traps, that this wasn't going to be easy, but it was good to, of course, roleplay it out anyway. So Granite then immediately heads to the barrel of water in the southeast of the dungeon. Again, going by the top-down perspective of the arena, and he sees at the bottom of this barrel I think it was a red vial, or a vial which's contents were not abundantly clear. And of course, we knew that it wasn't going to be water at the bottom of this barrel, in this barrel. So Granite, of course, being a barbarian with plenty of hit points to spare, thrusts his arm into the bottom of this barrel, and he reaches out and brings up his arm, which is boiling and bubbling and sizzling and blistering, because it's acid in there. So he has it revealed to him by the DM that this is a potion of healing, which I think which probably would have been a waste, to be honest, because I think his hit points were rather high. So he didn't necessarily need it. We were sort of keeping it handy. And he did actually offer to give it to me later on, but alas, he was unnecessary. He could have kept it for himself, and he would have been fine, because he does take a bit of a beating right towards the end of the dungeon, I think. So anyway, I say a bit of a beating. Not really. I think it takes like actually 1 hit point, but I don't know. Maybe at level 1 that's a lot. Especially when there's not really anyone who's sort of geared towards healing as such, like our cleric of the Tempest. I think, could use their light abilities, but was trying to sort of, wasn't really sort of geared towards that. I think had very limited use of them. So anyway, Shori is investigating a barrel towards the west of the dungeon, towards the northwest of the dungeon, and she's sort of flipping the lid over with a sword, noticing as well as a lot of tripwires as well. I think she trips those, and I think some spike traps are detonated. I can't remember all the details, but she survives, gets out of the way of whatever was there, and it doesn't do anything at all to her. So. Huzzah. So she's flipping over the lid of this barrel anyway, and she sees she's sort of poking it with the sword. It's just straw, or is it just straw? Well, that's a question for another time, because she's then in combat with the scorpion that she quickly dispatches. And we also notice as well a ticking on this crate in the center, and the ticking is getting faster and faster and faster, and eventually, just as our character's sort of nearing the center now, the ticking stops. And the left and right sides of the crate fall open. And my character standing quite near to these panels of the crate. And I'm not gonna do it justice, because this is because Michaela had done a fantastic description of this beast that had slithered out of this cage, and I was thinking, okay, it's got a snake-like body, so what, it's a giant cobra or something like that, or is it a naga maybe? It's like, it can't be a naga, because they don't have mandibles that are also spitting acid, and what has 100 legs? It turns out we were fighting a giant centipede. The centipede immediately sees my very brightly lit character and attacks. Now, I have to agree with Granite's assessment that Mr. Waistcoat would have wished that he had some leather armour. Now, it would have been less practical than my mage armour, but it would have made me feel a whole lot more comfortable, as this creature just ripped through my enchantment and through a perfectly good, brand new, clean waistcoat and green shirt underneath. With, of course, acidic, dripping mandibles. Thankfully, it didn't do any acid damage. It just did the whole 5 points of melee bite damage. Now, the Texas Chainsaw Christmas Sweater had proceeded then to use Fey Presence to try and get out of this. Now, I had to ask, how do I use this ability? And I had to explain it because I don't think our DM knew word for word what it was. So basically, Fey Presence allows you to charm or frighten any creature within a 10-foot cube, and it was from my hand. So thankfully there was no one in rage, and I did have to make sure, because otherwise I would have to use a disengage action, which probably wouldn't help matters. And they also have to save DC 13, which thankfully would not have happened. Now, I don't think it was my choice at the time, because Michaela had actually caused the creature to run away, frightened upon my success using Fey Presence. So this creature couldn't move willingly within 30 feet of me, and it would also change its attack target as well. So I proceeded to run towards where Shoria was, where this barrel was, in the hopes that I might be able to hide behind her or whatever. I'd also said to Shoria as well, I apologise for leaving you behind there. I got caught up in the chaos. And to which we had a chuckle about that. And, of course, I said, okay, now go on, shoo, kill this thing for me. Of course, she went round the rocks, disarming further tripwires, and had proceeded to join Ira and Granite, now seeing the carnage that had taken place, blood dripping away towards this rock. And this creature was now frightened, so it had to choose someone else. I think Ira was its new target. So she's whacking away at it as it's trying to then chase after me again once it's towards the end of my turn. And I'm trying to Eldritch Blast it and missing. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure that I managed to explode a scorpion. My Eldritch Blast looking like one of these Skyrim dragon shouts, like unrelenting force, but as it's travelling it has like cards face down, like as if it's going to sort of slice through the target. I realise it's still force damage, that's just the way I flavour it. Anyway, so this creature is now attacking them, and I'm trying to Eldritch Blast them, and I just narrowly miss Ira by a hair, and this centipede by, I don't know, a mandible, a tendril, whatever appendages giant centipedes have. I just narrowly missed them both by a hair, and this bolt just shoots in between them, missing, so everyone else then gets to just melee attack this creature and just constantly hack at it. And eventually, Granite manages to strike it hard enough that it starts to run away in fear. And this is something that I want to work into Garvel Grimhammer's story, in that he was a witness to this event, and he's sort of wondering why this creature didn't sort of remain and die with dignity. Why did its survival instincts kick in? And that's sort of that sort of made him realise that maybe he needs to have a look further into like sort of better death rights and honour and all these kind of things, and the understanding of survival instinct and the avoidance of death. Anyway, so this creature's running away, and Granite chases after it, and he has asked those immortal words, "How do you want to finish it?" So Granite, being a dwarven barbarian, proceeds to charge at the creature, raging, mouth frothing, and I forget the details. I imagine he executed this creature in some spectacular fashion, probably involving decapitation or disembowelment of some kind, while using the sort of centipede's snake-like body as some sort of stepladder up to its vile, acidic head. So, however, just because the combat was over doesn't necessarily mean we were done in this dungeon. We still had to find our way out. We still had to find this translucent stone. So, Granite then charges over to the east of the dungeon, triggering the Caltrops trap, taking 1 point of piercing damage, I do believe, and then he's going to inspect this crate towards the east. Shoria and Ira are also running towards the east, directly east, to have a look at a barrel obscured by some shrubbery, and also as well there's a pressure plate and some tripwires there that appear to be leading through or underneath the barrel. So they're both over there inspecting it. Meanwhile, Barthelmet, often mispronounced Barthelmet, I forgot to mention earlier. Not to worry, I shall use that for my charlatan background when disguising self at will. Or maybe an Eldritch Adept, I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll work on it. Barthelmet then proceeds to run to the centre of the map and decides to cast Mending on himself to mend his ripped waistcoat and fancy shirt underneath. Unfortunately, he realises that this is a 10-minute spell, so he then proceeds to run over and try to disarm the traps. However, Ira and Shoria, being ever, I don't know what the equivalent is, trigger happy, hilt happy maybe, I don't know, being very eager to disarm these traps themselves, they proceed to slash and tap at these the different triggers for these traps. And poor Ira, she's hit by about 6 spikes in a spike trap, or she's hit by several of these spikes that jut out of the wall and proceed to launch themselves at Ira. I think a few thunk into a shield, and alas, she takes very little damage though, so that's fortunate. There's nothing in the barrel from what I understand, or the barrel isn't inspected in time, because Granite manages to find the translucent stone in the bottom of this crate. I think it was an empty crate as well, there was nothing there, and proceeds to say he's got the stone, and he rushes over past the caltrops, nearly pushing me in and saying watch out, as I'm nearly falling on my arse. And just before Granite can put the stone into the brazier and exit without us, the adventure is over, called by the DM because we survived everything that could have been survived, and there was no need to sort of kill anyone any further. There were other traps there as well. There were some bear traps, there were some other caltrops hidden away, and I think maybe another spike trap, I can't remember. But yeah, it was a great time had by all, and we learnt a very valuable lesson. I did as well. The lesson being that you are not the main character of the story. You are by all means the main character of your story, but others are not sidekicks, and they are under no obligation to help or heal you. You are all working together for a common goal. Let the goal be the main story, be the main centerpiece. Don't try and hog all the spotlight. And I think that's maybe what my character was doing in places. Not necessarily trying to take on the centipede, that was by accident. But perhaps, trying to do too many things at once, and, I sort of realised as I was at 3 hit points, my character might not come out of this alive. And I would very much like them to get to demigod levels. I was about to say demi-cleric levels then. That was another completely different character. Yeah, I would very much like them to get to demigod levels, and maybe one day be another Warlock's patron. So we all made it out alive, and I think we had accomplished more than any other of Michaela's groups, who had apparently total party killed at some stage, and we'd done well, I think, and we learnt that day that we will take greater care to strategize and to be more tactical, to know our strengths and weaknesses, formations. And I think if we had been in better formation, none of us, I don't think, would have taken any damage at all, and we could have taken out enemies quite far away. Ira having Sacred Flame, myself having Eldritch Blast and other spells. I'm sure Granite might have been able to spare one of his axes to throw at an enemy, and I think Shoria might have had a longbow upon a person. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it was a fantastic first session, and it was a great way to put your sort of character skills that you learned in workshops to better effect. I must also praise as well, I don't know if Michaela had drawn this map herself, but the Colosseum, I must find out where this map is from, because it is a brilliant one, and I hope to, even if it's paid for, I would still like to maybe link it in the comments or in the description, because it was a fantastic map to fight in. It did seem very fair, and I imagine DMs can have their own assets like the shrubbery and the pressure plates and traps and the rocks and the containers, if they so choose, or they can have other obstacles, or none, as the case may be. Perhaps maybe even another portcullis entrance. So it was a great introduction to tile-based combat, knowing our class capabilities, and just getting to generally try the classes we might like. As we would later find out, none of us will be playing these same classes again in our Lost Manor Fandelver game, but it was fantastic all the same. So thank you to Michaela, and of course the players there, Kat, Sam, and Annie. We had built, I think we built very good chemistry there. And I would strongly recommend something like this as a sort of group, sort of like a team building exercise when you are with your first group of players. So thank you very much for watching. Ta-ra a bit.
It serpentines its way to you, Mr. Bartholomew, skittering across the ground.
How's that waistcoat working out for you now?